know that old adage, beware of the woman with one eyebrow. Well, the Romans certainly did, and they had even more reasons to be suspicious than we do today. For, if such a woman happened to be beautiful, then she was probably up to no good. Such a woman in ancient Rome was called a femme fatale, meaning fatale woman, a term we owe to the French. But this figure was not an invention of the late 19th century. She appears already in Greek literature, where Homer describes Helen as a face that launched 1,000 ships. But it is in Roman poetry that the femme fatale truly flourishes, a dangerous, alluring woman whose wiles lead men to ruin. The most famous example is perhaps Cleopatra, who is said to have been the inspiration for Shakespeare's Cleopatra. But there are other women about whom Catullus, Ovid and Propertius wrote with equal passion. One such woman was none other than Augustus's sister, and while scholars have long debated whether she really did or merely was suspected of having had an affair with her brother as friend, the poet Horace, what's certain is that the rumors alone were enough to inspire some of his finest poetry. Another was Julia, the daughter of Augustus, who became the mistress of her father's adopted son and heir Tiberius. Julia, a scandalous figure in her own right, was banished by Augustus, but continued to make trouble from afar, including an alleged affair with the Egyptian king Agrippa. But today we will consider another Roman femme fatale, a woman whose name has survived only through the oblique references in poetry. In fact, our only source for her life is a single line in a letter by Pliny the Younger, who says he met her at the house of a friend, the poet and yet from this slight reference, we can piece together the scandalous details of her story thanks to the poems inspired by her. So, let's get into it. Clodia was the sister of two famous brothers. The elder, Publius, was a politician who gained notoriety for his extravagant lifestyle and his turbulent career. He made powerful enemies when he illegally married the former Empress Servilia Caffini, who was still the aunt of the young Caesar Octavian. Later, he left her and took up with a former slave named Metra, whom he set up in a luxurious house near the Forum. Then, after winning election as tribune of the plebs, he made war on the sacred grove of the goddess of chastity, the Vestal Virgins, and on the patrician family of the Corneli. He also prosecuted the philosopher Epicurus, accusing him of Naturally, he was banished in 88 BC, but returned the following year to take part in civil war against Sulla, shot by assassins sent by his political enemy. The consul L. Cornelius Sulla, Claudius's younger brother, Appius, was also a man of infamous character. During his tribunate in 86 BC, he introduced a series of radical reforms, including the abolition of the old patrician order of senators and the replacement of the traditional 4-year terms of office with single annual terms. However, his attempts to redistribute land among the poor proved unpopular, and he made powerful enemies. He too was proscribed by Sulla and fled to Asia Minor. It was here that he met his end, falling victim to assassins hired by his Roman enemies. But while their brother may have dabbled in politics, it was their sister who made the art of love and wore her beating heart. Meet Clodia, also known by her nickname Lesbia. We first hear of her in a poem by Catullus, who addresses her directly as my Lesbia, or my darling Lesbia. In the poem, he mocks a rival poet for having composed a book of 400 lines on the beauties of Lesbia, claiming that he himself could write 400 hexameters praising her left eyebrow alone. Here, her beauty is obvious, but so are the dangers of her charms. Already in this early poem, she is the subject of other poets, just as Helen was the subject of countless poets and bards in Greece and later of the Trojan War. As often happens in the world of ancient poetry, the lady herself seems to have been something of a muse. To his mistress, Catullus addressed 38 of his poems, mostly love poems, but also several where he laments their failed relationship or mocks her infidelity, as in the poem where he learns that she has been unfaithful with a bald youth, and declares that henceforth he will love her only from afar. And it seems that he wasn't the only suitor suffering the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. A poem addressed to Lesbia's waiting maid speaks of how the poet has come to the house of Catullus's friend, and has sat all day and wait outside her door, but she has never appeared. Another poem tells of how the speaker has come upon Lesbia in a brothel, and how he, along with 2 friends, took her back to his house, but that in the middle of the night she got up, slipped out the window and ran away. And another describes how the speaker has come to Lesbia's house, and has found her asleep in bed with 2 men, both of them bald. It seems that Clodia was not bashful about flaunting her romantic conquests, since in one poem, Catullus imagines her walking about the streets of Rome at night without any escort. Oh, how the men must have loved to see her then, even though she was clad all in black. Catullus doesn't hold back in his descriptions of her, calling her my slut, and saying that she smells of stale sweat. At times, he vows that he will never again set eyes on her wanton flesh. But the next poem begins with, I lied when I said that I would never again set eyes on your naked body. And he goes on to complain that she is not making love with him nearly often enough. Clearly, he is still besotted with her. In a rather shocking image, he compares the scratches on her breast to the landscape of a beloved Italy, with Liguria being the stretch of coastline, Genoa and the French border, and Sardinia lying off the coast like a solitary nipple. He also claims that he could recognize her even in the darkness, based on the sound of her voice. While Catullus paints a sometimes unflattering portrait of Lesbia, he is positively tame, compared to the libertine Gaius Valerius. This poet opens his Epicurean cycle with a poem addressed to Lesbia, inviting her to leave her husband and run away with him. He begs her not to be afraid of scandal or the gossip of gossiping women, saying that he is willing to go even farther into exile than he has already, just to be with her. In another poem, he calls her his exquisite delight, but chides her for complaining about the frigid winter nights, since there are plenty of warm places to which they could escape. After all, Bithynia is not far off, and in that city, a prostitute costs no more than a cent. One poem tells of how Catullus and his friend Furius have gone out to meet Lesbia, but have gotten lost in the crowd and now cannot find her. Catullus worries that she may have taken a lover in their absence, and he ends the poem by begging her to light a torch on the balcony, so that he can spot her from afar. In another, he hears a woman singing in the bathhouse, and immediately thinks it is Lesbia. In another poem, he addresses her as the light of his life and as his sole joy, and he tells her not to worry about the slanderer, since he does not fear anything as long as he can spend his final days with her in pleasure. One poem tells of how Lesbia got drunk at a party in her honor, and the old men laughed when they saw her staggering around. Then she went into the garden to cool off, and there she asked a statue for help in bearing her burden of wine. Another time, she went to the gladiator games with Furius and she delighted in the spectacle until a pair of gladiators turned their backs to the audience, and she exclaimed, "Would that I were somewhere else." When Catullus heard her say this, he grew angry and threatened to kill anyone who came between them, declaring, "I am prepared to murder, even for you." But Lesbia cried out, "Don't do anything rash," for she realized how easily his jealousy might drive him to madness. When Lesbia dies, Catullus imagines her soul as a tiny bird that flies down from Olympus to kiss him and grieve over her mortal body, even after death. Therefore, she haunts his dreams. If these poems are anything to go by, then it seems clear that Clodia lived up to her reputation as a femme fatale. Her looks and her charm made her irresistible to men, and yet she betrayed them all. In the end, it was not a man who killed her, nor a woman, but time. As always, it was time. And speaking of time, it is now time to wrap up this episode. I hope you enjoyed meeting Clodia. If you want to hear more about ancient Roman history, please subscribe. And as a special treat this month, I have included a bonus episode about the ancient city of Pompeian. This is exclusive to our subscribers, so don't miss out. Thanks for watching.